Hello my friends, so Donny is the best friend of Putin, who saves him and Moscow. He declares a ceasefire, and it was agreed with Russian and Ukrainian side for 3 days, from 9th till 11th of May included. And you know what? Ukraine also agreed on that. The American administration contacted the Ukrainian side, and Zelensky already published his own decree. And it's not a hoax, this is the official site of Ukrainian president's office. So I translated to English immediately: decree of the President of Ukraine, taking into account numerous requests for the humanitarian purpose outlined in the negotiations with American side on May 8, 2026. I declare or I order to allow a parade to held in Moscow, Russian Federation, on May the 9th. For the duration of the parade, 10 a.m. Kyiv time, May 9th, the territorial square of the Red Square will be excluded from the plan for use of Ukrainian weapons. And here we have coordinates published. This decree shall enter into force on the date of its signing. President Zelensky. At first I thought that it's a hoax, but no, this is the official order, which is kind of the trolling of the Russian side. In his bigger and more detailed statement, President Zelensky on Twitter mentioned the long-range sanctions of Ukraine, which are postponed for May 9th, 10th and 11th because of the main factor that was proposed, and it is the prisoner exchange, 1,000 on 1,000. I mean, this huge number, definitely. Red Square is less important for us than the lives of Ukrainian prisoners who can be returned home. Of course, it's very important, but at the same time you see the weakness of Ukraine here, and I would say it's the weakness of the democratic countries, where the value of the human life is pretty much above everything. It's not for Russia doesn't care about their prisoners of war. They use Ukrainian POWs for exchange as a bargain, as some sort of the hostages they're held in Russia. And if Russia needs some sort of the ceasefire, like on May the 9th, they might propose the major exchange. And for Ukrainian government, it would be very difficult to explain Ukrainian society, and especially those family members of those soldiers who are kept in Russian captivity for many years already, to convince them why we need a couple of the drones on the Red Square. And also there's the question about the success of this operation, because Russia sent lots of the air defense there. So it will be difficult to explain why don't we need this major exchange. Because it is always good. Then our guys are coming home. It is fantastic. And of course, Red Square is not that important than human lives. Here, I 100% agree. And I just hope that it is not a hoax, that exchange will definitely happen. Well, from what I understood, Ukraine agreed on a ceasefire, but if Russian strikes continue, Ukraine, after all, may hit some of the Russian infrastructure. Well, not on military parade, it was already a decree published by President Zelensky, but the rest of the Russian infrastructure, we have a big question of whether the truce for 3 days might continue as planned. I think the probability for it is like 50-50. And of course, under Zelensky's tweet, we have multiple of the people who are not okay with that. You merge, shame, don't hit the parade, hit other targets that left the Muscovites without air defense. You bent under Trump, who bent under the dickhead. The dickhead won again. Everyone in the world was watching, I think, Taco Ukraine. So we have this one. Loser, everyone believed you, and you send them to hell without, yeah, there are lots of the hateful comments here. Yeah, I think it's the usual people's reaction. Some of them support, yeah, really, the exchange, but some of them are angry. Because Zelensky before advertised, and he even said that, okay, Russia moves air defense systems from the very valuable targets for us, so maybe we're gonna do something, we'll see. So it was over-exaggeration from Ukrainian side especially about this possible action on May the 9th, at least something, because before Russia violated Ukrainian ceasefire, targeting Ukrainian cities, Kramatorsk and Zaporizhia, killing lots of dead civilians. And Ukraine promised some sort of the retaliation, but definitely it's not happening from what we see. And Russia took those threats also seriously. They canceled the part of their military parade, vehicles and aviation part, plus they grounded all of the celebrations in multiple regions of Russia, like completely canceled. Moreover, they just recently removed accreditation of the international media services who were approved before to film the parade in Moscow. And they established the delay for the live air. So in case something happens, they might cut the broadcast for TV. That was the smart move. Russia was concerned, but Donny introduced himself as the mediator here. And after all, maybe I was wrong with my previous video. I think Donald Trump has some sort of the leverage, not on Ukraine, because the direct military support is being cancelled by him and only Pearl program is working. I think Donny has something with Zelensky personally and Zelensky's friends. Well, I don't want to talk about it too much, but there is the new wave of the corruption scandal with Zelensky's friends, and there is already the name of Zelensky on the tapes, some sort of the Vova, but there is only one Vova, so Vladimir possible, and it's not Vladimir Putin. There is the scandal about some of the property that was shared between Mindich, between President Zelensky, allegedly on the tapes he was said as Vova, and all of that was leaked again to the press. I guess the last week it was published and the Ukrainian government is so silent about it. But the scandal is out there, and Ukrainian ex-defense minister Umerov is now in the United States of America for some sort of the negotiations, and he is also on those tapes. Yeah, probably should record a separate video about this new wave of the corruption scandal, because before I filmed about this Mindich Gate thing, and it really harms the Ukrainian government reputation, but luckily there is an investigation, and it doesn't matter if you're low-rank official or a president. I think if you're in corruption by the time there is the war in Ukraine, you should be held accountable. That's my opinion. But you know what is interesting? That FBI is also involved there. So there is a leverage from American side. It is 100%. But at this stage, we are in lack of the direct evidence of the involvement of all of the people into the scheme, including Ukrainian president. Those who were proved, they left Ukraine, like Mindich and other guys, or they've been arrested. Some of them bailed out quite easily, by the way. So without the evidence, really, I cannot state that Zelensky is 100% involved there, but there is the group of his friends, which are in this corruption scandal, and they're on the tapes. The tapes are legit. They were published by Ukrainian Anti-Corruption Bureau, and recent wave was published. They confirmed legit, were published by Ukrainskaya Pravda Media. They got the original files. I guess that Mindich himself, being in Israel, just sends those files to Ukrainian media to expose partially someone from this group. So you may call it a conspiracy theory, maybe not a conspiracy, just a theory that maybe United States administration, they have the direct leverage on the case, because they're partially involved in this investigation. And maybe they have some of the evidence, and they told to Zelensky, basically, there is the Trump message. We're going to discuss it together with you. And Donald Trump really asked Ukraine, and Ukraine obeyed for that one. Okay, so there is the only winning for Ukraine is to get prisoners of war. And Zelensky, in his message, he put it on top. Okay, we're going to have prisoners of war. They're coming back. They're the most important from all of the important things. But many people are dissatisfied with this decision. And guys, again, those are just the theories. You may throw rotten tomatoes at me, but I'm trying to figure out all of the variants based on the facts, all right? Based on the information we have from the investigations even. So I'm trying to find why Zelensky agreed on that, like objective variant. And if it's just a prisoner swap, if he put it on top, well, yeah, good to go. But I have the feeling, this inside, that it was not about the prisoners of war, all of this stuff. It's understandable that Russia keeps them as the hostages, and they are willing to exchange not all on all, but just occasionally some of the numbers. Now you understand this Russian's policy, why it doesn't agree on the full exchange, yeah? So it's their blackmail tactics. And here we go with Donald Trump. I'm pleased to announce that there will be a 3-day ceasefire, May 9th, 10th, and 11th, in the war between Russia and Ukraine. The celebration in Russia is Victory Day, but likewise in Ukraine, because they were also a big part and factor of World War II. Well, luckily he said something about Ukraine and the Ukrainian participation in the Second World War. As for the numbers, for you to understand the scale of the losses of Ukraine during the Second World War, 9 millions of Ukrainians died, 9 millions, and full Ukraine was occupied by Nazi Germany. And I guess without Ukraine, Soviets wouldn't be able to win this war. Ukraine was the vast territory that was captured by Germans, and they wasted lots of the resources on Ukrainian lands, Ukrainian territory. And their further success reaching Moscow was stopped also because of the Ukrainian resistance. not of Ukrainian people on resistance, but Soviet people on Ukrainian territory as well. This ceasefire will include suspension of all kinetic activity and also prison swap 1,000 prisoners from each country, which is good. I mean, all kinetic activity means frontline activity, I guess, as well. What is interesting that Doni says that this request was made directly by me, so not by Putin, and Putin's request was the ceasefire for 2 days, 8th of May and 9th of May. And of course, Ukraine launched some of the missiles on Russia on 8th of May because Russia also violated Ukrainian proposed ceasefire. But here Doni comes and he saves the Russian parade. And I very much appreciate its agreement by President Vladimir Putin and President Vladimir Zelensky. Hopefully it's the beginning of the end of the very long, deadly and hard-fought war. I do not think it's the end because it's understandable that Putin is willing to continue. So talks are continuing on ending the major conflict. What talks, Donald Trump? Russians just yesterday or the day before yesterday, Ushakov himself said that negotiations are useless without Ukraine agreeing on capitulation from Donbass, and only after that Russia may start some of the negotiations. So leaving Donbass is not the condition for the ceasefire, for the end of war. It's the condition for Russia to start negotiations. And all of the circus before, it's about nothing. So again, we are circling around those negotiations, Kushner, Witkoff, and all of that. So he wants to end this major conflict, the biggest since World War II, and we are getting closer and closer every day. Thank you for it. Okay, so not a very long tweet to read out, and it's understandable. Yeah, the thing that Donald Trump says that it's his idea, not Putin's. It's in a way good, yeah. But the problem here with Doni that he might tell, okay, there is the agreement reached between Ukraine and Russia, but just yesterday he was saying about agreement with Iran. Iran agrees on this, on unblocking the Strait of Hormuz, and they're demining the strait together with the American army. He said like that before. So here it might be his delusion. Yeah, I honestly believe that Ukraine will not strike Russian parade. And maybe there will be a ceasefire for a single day, maybe 2 days, but after all it will be violated by Russians, of course. And they will blame Ukraine and they will try to present Ukraine as the side which violated the ceasefire to show to Donald Trump, you see, Donald Trump, it was your idea. And Zelensky said that he agreed, but now they fire towards our positions. I'm guaranteeing you, 100% it's going to be like that. Because what's the accountability of violating the ceasefire? Nothing. Zero. If Russia violates it, Donald Trump will not blame Putin. It's understandable. Maybe he'll blame Zelensky, saying, oh, Zelensky, it's better not to hit Russia. You agreed on 3 days ceasefire. So if there is no accountability, Russia will do it. Russia will violate it on 10th or 11th. Mark my word, I could be not correct, but I think I am right about it, knowing the Russian style. The most interesting thing here that 14 months ago, Donald Trump called Zelensky that he doesn't have cards, that he should obey to whatever negotiation is, and they will resolve it, yeah? 14 months ago. And now he's calling Zelensky not to use Ukrainian cards on the Russian parade. And this is humiliation of Russia, I think, partially, yeah? So the good part of everything of that, of all of this military parade drama. And Putin himself had to call Donald Trump to somehow push Zelensky not to strike Russian parade. Please, Donny, help. So it's not about Putin, yeah? Partially that video that I recorded today, I think most of it is still correct about Putin losing his grip. Putin is unable to control those events from this mighty leader who is capable to capture Kiev in 3 days. He went to what? Begging a NATO country to somehow calm down Ukraine that doesn't have cards? This is this is unhinged, really. And Russians, they're also in shock, especially Russian military bloggers. They're writing that it's some sort of the humiliation. And why should we retaliate only against Ukrainian strikes on Moscow's parade? What about other cities of Russia? What about very sensitive infrastructure that was partially destroyed, those Russian oil ports? Should we respond on that? We're always telling about hitting decision-making points in Kiev, but we did nothing so far. And Ukraine is good to go, producing massively those long-range components, weapons, to hit us really hard. That's what they say. on their channels. And this encounterment of Peskov and one of the Russian journalists out there in Kremlin during the press conference or after the press conference, so the reaction of Peskov on direct question whether we should wait for the approval for Ukraine to hold the military parade. Let's watch it. Do we need their permission? And look at the face of Peskov. He immediately turned like, permission? He is even a red color guy. Maybe it's the white balance that is set wrong on the camera, but I think no, because we have also different camera perspective on him.
Да, конечно, нам не нужно ничего дозволения.
Look how he clapped. Like...
Ничего дозволения.
But he is frustrated about this question, it's 100%, and he doesn't know how to reply.
No.
Thinking. Come on, Peskov, do you need the permission to hold the parade? Everyone is waiting.
Ну, наверное, горе тому, кто пытается над Днем Победы подтрунивать.
Okay, tries to make such fun of Victory Day and make fun such... Well, he blames Ukraine of making fun of such a parade and...
Да, и такие глупые шутки.
Silly jokes. He called it silly jokes, but at the same time, it's a reality.
Делать.
It is very hard for him, really hard to understand what is happening. Like, they are really dependent on Ukrainian civil, and Ukrainian civil partially dependent on some of the allies. And we don't know those behind the curtains negotiations between Trump and Zelensky or White House administration and Ukrainian administration, but there is some of the leverage that Trump used. Whether it's corruption scandal or something else, I hope we'll see it in the future.
Это, наверное, скорее его большая беда.
Okay, it's his problem.
А нам не нужно ничьи разрешения.
We don't need permissions. Yeah, of course.
С тем, чтобы гордиться нашим Днем Победы.
We don't need anyone's permissions to be proud of our Victory Day. But Peskov, you need a permission to conduct a military parade. No one tells about being proud of a great patriotic victory or something like that. But come on, you canceled the part of parade, military vehicles. It hasn't been like that since 2007. Just imagine. Yeah, long time. And look again at his skin tone. It is crazy. And he was like, this mimics is outstanding. Peskov is actually humiliated by this question and he didn't know what to say. He thought he like several seconds tried to came out with at least some of the answer. And yeah, that's his answer. By the way, Putin's residence in Valdai was blurred on Yandex Maps. Yandex is like a Russian Google. Well, probably he afraid even there. Well, he's not in Valdai already for a few months. He's hiding somewhere in a bunker in Kuban. But just in case, Valdai is blurred. And once again, Zelensky said about the principle of the mirroring of our actions is well known. So, if Russia attacks Ukraine during the ceasefire or truce for the length of those 3 days, Ukraine would retaliate, of course, with a similar kind of the strike. It's now understandable, and he again emphasized that.
Высказался президент, есть заявление.
Yeah, of course, Russians were really concerned. Lavrov yesterday mentioned that Ukraine promised to spoil our celebration. We take it really seriously, those threats, and we're gonna retaliate on Kiev. Those embassies should evacuate now. And yeah, maybe our European allies, they knew that nothing is going to happen. Well, all it turns actually to the nothing burger. We'll see how the ceasefire goes, but the fact that there is going to be a possible exchange of the prisoners of war is also a good news. I hope that it will be held tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, because, for example, Russia may accuse the Ukrainian side of violation of the ceasefire and say, okay, because of the violation, we're not gonna to exchange prisoners of war. Also as a variant, yeah? Okay, I already listened that Yuri Ushakov, who is one of the main advisors of Putin, he confirmed that Russia agrees on the ceasefire, and it was also like proposal from the Russian side during those few negotiations between Trump and Putin and the phone call that happened before. So they support the decision, but at the same time they say that it's the common one, yeah, Russian and American thing. but Trump says that it's just his. Well, nothing special here. Trump always says I because he is a freaking narcissist. Well, Ushakov also mentioned that there will be the exchange, which is very important. So Trump mentioned the exchange, Zelensky also, and the Russian side. The exchange will happen in the next 3 days, as they say, during this truce that was agreed pretty much. So guys, we should not expect any strikes on Russian military parade. Yeah, I was going to stream it actually, but no, it will not happen. And moreover, we shouldn't expect any strikes on Russian infrastructure if there are no any violations of the ceasefire from Russian, of course, side. Ukraine will hold firm the fire, I'm sure about it. Well, guys, what can I say? The news as they are. And by the way, there are some of the Ukrainian missiles are now in the air. Yeah, the ceasefire was already confirmed, announced, but Ukraine launched those missiles before. Yeah, and they're flying to Moscow region as well. When I posted that around 5 hours ago, yeah, more than 400 drones, not missiles, drones, I'm sorry, are flying to Russia. Many of them has landed already, by the way. And tomorrow morning, I guess I'm gonna publish my regular update. Here I just wanted to emphasize the news, to put real attention on those negotiations, Russian military parade on May the 9th, because like all of the media sources, all of the influencers who are speaking about Ukraine, it was the main topic for everyone. Well, now at least we have something to expect, and I'm very glad for those soldiers who I hope will be exchanged, and their families as well. This is fantastic, guys. This is the best news ever for those guys, for the families, and for Ukraine in general. Yeah, it is good. But some people, as I showed you, they're dissatisfied with this decision, and they say that Zelensky bowed for the king, for the Orange King. This is the politics, guys, and we are out of clue of what is happening behind the curtains. And we may only guess. I tell you some of the theories, what I think really, based on the facts, investigations happening, but I'm not saying that I'm correct. I could be wrong. Just my channel, my blog, it's called Dennis Davydov, and you need also to cross-check the information, and it's better not to trust me by every word. Yeah, I'm just one of the influencers out there, guy with the microphone, telling you some of the stories. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and if you want to support my job, please join my Patreon. The link for it is in the video description right below, or you might join membership of YouTube channel if you watch me on YouTube, because I also have Spotify. Well, anyways, with your support, you are making my job possible. And also, don't forget to press like to this video and subscribe for the channel. We're on the way to reach 1 million subscribers, hopefully this year. My friends, you're awesome, you're the best. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.